Joining me right now is former Trump 2020 campaign senior advisor, Jason Miller. Jason, I'm glad you're here to talk about this. Obviously, no one wants to see the commander-in-chief of the free world put in a position to have to be there at the podium if he's not up for it. Your reaction to what you just heard and what we saw yesterday?
Well, Maria, good morning. And it would be funny if it wasn't the leader of the free world and someone who we expect to go toe-to-toe with Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin. Here's my biggest concern, though, with yesterday's press conference, and that is this willingness from the mainstream media to equate Joe Biden's periods of silence, his political hibernation, with doing work. So as we saw in the campaign, he supposedly had this basement bunker retreat where he was coming up with COVID plans. Of course, then he didn't have anything to show for it. Now, yesterday, he finally reemerged and had a press conference, and not only did he not have a solution for the crisis at the southern border, he outright lied, saying that nothing has changed with regard to policies, and even the fact that 87% of those who have entered the country illegally are being released back into the United States. Joe Biden said most of them are being turned away. So it concerns me that the media thinks that just because he's quiet on something, he's working, when in reality, the Democrats are hiding him because of moments like this.
Well, I mean, it was extraordinary when he said that the majority of people are turned away or sent back. I mean, do we have any documentation that shows the majority of people showing up, which was, by the way, 100,000 people in February alone, that the majority of them are being sent back?
Well, no, and he was just lying to the American public. In fact, Maria, the Associated Press has a fact check out this morning saying that Joe Biden misled on the border yesterday. When he said nothing has changed, he actually has reversed a number of successful President Trump border policies. Remain in Mexico. President Trump had ended catch and release. Joe Biden is stopping the wall construction. And so for the fact that Joe Biden got up there and said that was problematic. But here's the one other thing, Maria. Joe Biden had one job yesterday, and that was to send a clear message to folks in Mexico and Central America that if you come to the United States illegally, you are not going to get in, you're going to be turned away. He didn't do that. And in fact, multiple times he had the opportunity. And so when we wonder why folks are coming to our southern border, why we have this crisis, it's all on Joe Biden. When he stood up there and said citizenship for 11 million undocumented folks back during the campaign, he was serious, as is Kamala Harris.
Unbelievable. Well, the former president, President Trump, responded to the press conference last night. He joined Laura Ingraham on Fox News. He signaled President Biden was given softball questions from the press, something he wouldn't be able to get away with. Your reaction to that, Jason? And then you had this one reporter saying, why don't you just do away with the filibuster if it is Jim Crow? I mean, is there an understanding in the press of what it would mean if the filibuster goes away and how the Democrats will be able to just jam in whatever legislation they want, from changing election laws, the way we vote, to economic policy and foreign policy?
Well, Maria, you bring up a really good point, and that's where I don't think that the press wants to go and give that much attention to what Joe Biden is promising, I should say, to do with the filibuster, because it would be such a radical change to our voting system. Now, if it were President Trump and Republicans who were doing this, of course, the media's hair would be on fire. They'd be saying, what the heck are you mean evil Republicans doing? But since it's Joe Biden and they want to see these policies, they're going to go and tamp it down. But again, with Joe Biden yesterday, when he was getting into H.R. 1 and he said, I'm going to make 3 points, and he says 1, 2, and then, gosh darn it. It's embarrassing at this, not just national, but international stage, that this is who we have leading us right now.
Well, you're right. China and the CCP has to be watching all of this so closely. Former President Trump, meanwhile, signals that he may create his own social media platform, Jason. Obviously, he was banned from Twitter and Facebook following the Capitol riots. Here's the former president on the Ingraham angle last night. Listen to this.
What I'm doing now, I almost like it better. I think I do like it better. So I put out statements now from the office of, and the statements are picked up by everybody. I mean, it actually works better. Now, with that being said, we may open up our own platform.
What is the president thinking, Jason? What can you tell us about this new platform?
Well, this is something that I'm very excited about, and I know that the president is excited about it as well, that he has this opportunity, and we think it'll probably be in the next 2 or 3 months or so, to launch his own platform. And there are a number of different companies, a number of different setups that he's taken a look at, some that are into the beta phase, some that are a little more in the conceptual aspect of it. But we have to remember, President Trump received almost 75 million votes. He's the biggest name in not just in American politics, but I'd say even in political history. Folks want to hear what he has to say, and we're doing that right now with press releases and with interviews and such. But I think about 2-3 months from now, you will see President Trump on his own platform. It'll be the biggest thing on social media.
Yeah, but Jason, I mean, are you also beholden to the big tech companies? I mean, Apple threw Parler off its Apple Store. So do you have any assurances that this new platform will be on the Apple Store, for example, so that you could actually get users to keep signing up?
I would expect that whatever platform President Trump does get behind and put his name to, that it will be something that'll be available widely, that folks will be able to get it, but also that there'll be systems in place in the back ends, everything from storage to where the big tech, the censorship folks can't come back and pull the nonsense that they did earlier this year.
All right, Jason, great to get your insights on all of this. Thanks very much. We will see you soon.